Which is green for me? Green.
Oh no.
Oh, sorry. Stop that up.
Yes, it did.
Oh yeah, they are a bit weird.
Can I go back to the do it?
You get ones without the
Countdown? I did the countdown. Okay. Now you're alive.
Happy Sabbath, everyone.
Happy Sabbath.
It's a beautiful sunny day here in Queensland. And thank you for those that are joining us online. We've got Bright and Madeline and Andrew and Robin. Is Kerry there with you, Robin? And Vitor and Kevin and Hassan. Blessings to you. It's early in the morning in Lebanon. So, and Wendy, glad you can join us from Arizona. Wonderful. Well, we're going to sing number 426, I Shall See the King. It's a nice tune, this one, isn't it? Oh, there's Kerry. I shall see the King where the angels sing. I shall see the King someday in the better land on the golden strand, and with him shall I ever stay. In his glory I shall see the King, and forever endless praises sing. 'Twas on Calvary Jesus died for me. I shall see the King someday. I extended in the wrong spot, but anyway. In the land of song, in the glory throng, where there never comes a night, with my Lord once slain, I shall ever reign in the glory land of light. In his glory I shall see the King, and forever endless praises sing. 'Twas on Calvary Jesus died for me. I shall see the King someday. I shall see the King, all my tributes bring, and shall look upon his face. Then my song shall be how he ransomed me, and has kept me by his grace. In his glory I shall see the King, and forever endless praises sing. 'Twas on Calvary Jesus died for me. I shall see the King someday. Isn't that a beautiful song? Welcome, Craig. And welcome to Bible a Day. That's Gary. Greetings to everyone in Queensland and beyond. Gary, glad you could join us. Ian and Megan in Inverell. And Sharon down at Broken Hill. And Rose. Glad you can join us, Rose. Blessings to you. And we're going to do 5:10, and then Robin has chosen 4:39. So 5:10. All right. Is this one that we learnt at Passover?
Yeah, sure is.
Oh, you're going to test me out.
Lorraine's offered to come up.
Yeah. It's a lovely tune, this one. I remember that. We should. Do you know this, Mum?
No,
Mum will sight read it. To guide you, yes. And your con. If you but trust in God to guide you and place your confidence in Him, you'll find Him always there beside you to give you hope and strength within. For those who trust God's changeless love, build on the rock that will not move. Thank you, Lord. What gain is there in futile weeping, in helpless anger and distress, if you are in His care and keeping? In sorrow will He love you less, for He who took for you a cross will bring you safe through every loss. Patient trust await His leisure, in cheerful hope with heart content, to take whate'er your Father's pleasure, and all discerning love hath sent. Doubt not your inmost wants are known to Him who chose you for His own. Sing, pray, and keep His ways unswerving. Offer your service faithfully, and trust His word, though undeserving. You'll find His promise to be true. Oh, sorry. True be true. Yeah. God will forsake in need the soul that trusts in Him indeed. That's what happens when you start thinking about what you're going to preach. Then you get caught out. So 4:39. Autopilot didn't work. All right, welcome to Darren. Glad you can join us, and Sharina and Ray Fichet in British Columbia. Wonderful. Glad you can join us. All right, so we're doing 4:39. 4:39. How far from home I asked as on I bent my steps, the watchman spake, the long dark night is almost gone, the morning soon will break. Then weep no more, but speed thy flight with hope's bright star, thy guiding ray, till thou shalt reach the realms of light in everlasting day. I asked the warrior on the field, this was his soul-inspiring song. With courage bold the sword I'll wield, the battle is not long. Then weep no more, but well endure the conflict till thy work is done. For this we know the prize is sure, when victory is won. I asked again, a sea and sun seemed with one voice to make reply. Time's wasting sands are nearly run, eternity is nigh. Then weep no more, with warning tones litigious signs are thickening round. The whole creation waiting groans to hear the trumpet sound. Not far from home, a blessed thought, the traveller's lonely heart to cheer, which oft a healing balm has brought, and dried the mourner's tear. Then weep no more, since we shall meet where weary footsteps never roam. Our trials past, our joys complete, safe in our Father's home. And Ian says, Gma sends her love and blessings. Hi, Gma. And Ruth is joining us. Wonderful, from Indonesia. I've been talking with Ruth this week. So glad you can join us. And Sharita will sing 309 in the next session. Hopefully that's not too late for you. I don't think it's late for you. And Judy, happy Sabbath. Glad that you can join us. So that will do. We'll shut the curtains and move the door. I remember one time or several times we went on a paddle steamer when we were in Mildura and watching the motor, the big steam piston engine running the paddles and everything like that. You can hear the motor chugging away. Well, in this presentation, we're going down into the motor of Adventism. So you'll need to watch your step. It might get a bit smelly, a bit smoky, but hopefully we get through this and it'll make it. Yes, thank you, Liam. I think it looks good now. So, yes. So I just encourage you to be patient as we work through this. I'm trusting it will all come together. We're basically in the latest book that I'm working on, and in these presentations, I'm basically bringing together all of the information that we have learned over the last 7 years and now applying it to the prophetic platform of Adventism and seeing what effect that has. And this is something that we have to do because the things we have been learning have just been awesome. And, how do we make them fit on the solid, immovable platform that Ellen White said that was there? How does this fit? Is this stepping off the platform? We need to make sure that it's part of the platform, and that's what we wish to do. If you've been watching recent presentations, this morning you'll be drinking the wine of sonship and daughtership to God. Isn't it wonderful to know that we're children of God? Vitor and I were having a conversation yesterday, and we just found it very, very interesting that most of the apostles when they start their epistles, they refer to themselves as a servant. And John doesn't start his epistles that way, but he says, "Beloved, now are we the sons of God." It's just, is there a reason for this? And is there a reason why John didn't actually get martyred? These are some interesting thoughts, aren't they? He nearly got martyred, didn't he? But he survived as a son of God.
Boiling pot of oil.
Yes, he survived it, and he came out the other side. And we're discussing the fact that at the end of the epistle, the Gospel of John, there was this rumor saying John wasn't going to die. And he wrote, it's not that he wouldn't die, it's just that if he tarried till I come, what is it to you? And he was on the Isle of Patmos. I don't know if we know where he was buried, or he might have been translated. Is it possible? Who knows? It's speculation. But it's just interesting to think, well, he was one of the few that said, he and Paul were basically the only two that referred to, even though Paul called himself a servant, he said, God sent forth the Spirit of his Son into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father. So he obviously understood this principle, but did they all understand this principle? Anyway, I might do a presentation on that another time. Welcome to Hania, rich Sabbath blessings. It was nice to see Hania during the week, and our prayers are with you, sister. So let's kneel, and if we can, and we'll pray. Father, we thank you so much that we can come into your presence through our Lord Jesus Christ, your only begotten Son. Thank you for the double portion of your Spirit. Thank you for the extra portion of wine, the blood of grapes, the delight in our sonship and daughtership to you. We thank you that we are your children and that you do not desire sacrifice and offering, but to show mercy. We thank you for your mercy. And I pray, Father, for an outpouring of your Spirit. Give us discernment, give us understanding. Help us to comprehend the points that are being made here and to see how it fits into the great scheme of the platform of truth. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. It's not the great scream, but although plenty of the daughters of Babylon would scream about this, that's for sure. So, Brent, glad you can join us. That's very kind of you, Brent. Thank you very much. So we're going to dive into Daniel. But before we do that, the importance of the sanctuary. Just two quotes, because we're going to be talking about the sanctuary. And this is Great Controversy 409, the scripture which above all others has been both the foundation and central pillar of the Advent faith, was the declaration, under 2,300 days, then shall a sanctuary be cleansed. If something is a foundation and a central pillar, is that important? Mm-hmm. There's nothing more important than this. So we need to understand what it means. Under 2,300 days, then shall a sanctuary be cleansed. And another quote from 1906, the correct understanding of the ministration in the heavenly sanctuary is the foundation of our faith. So what is it that Jesus is ministering? And as we get into this presentation, we will unpack this. All right, so let's turn to Daniel 8. This is the critical passage that we need to consider. I've highlighted a few points. Hopefully they're all in green. They look like it. Therefore, the male goat grew very great, but when he became strong, the large horn was broken. So who was the male goat? Greece. And who was the first horn? Alexander. Was broken, and in place of it, 4 notable ones came up toward the 4 winds of heaven, and out of one of them came a little horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. And it grew up. And who is the little horn here? Anyone know? Rome? Yes, pagan, and in this one it's pagan and then papal Rome. And it cast down some of the host. Who is the host? God's people. And the stars. Who are the stars? Well, the leaders. Yeah, the leaders. The stars, the 7 stars which I saw in your hands are the angels or the leaders of the 7 churches. So stars are leaders. To the ground and trampled on them. He even exalted himself as high as the prince of the host. Who's the prince of the host? Christ. And by him the daily sacrifices is supplied. The daily was taken away and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. So here's one reference to a sanctuary. Okay, there's 2 references to a sanctuary in this passage. Because of transgression, an army was given over to the horn to oppose the daily, and he cast the truth to the ground. He did all this and prospered. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to that certain one who was speaking, how long will be the vision? Now notice the word concerning is a supplied word. That's a very important. When you see supplied words, a number of supplied words, you are starting to get interpretation from the translator. Okay? Sometimes you need supplied words to make it make sense, but often you don't. And I'm suggesting that supplied word is changing the meaning of the text, as we will see. But how long will be the vision? So if we took that out, how long will be the vision, the daily, and the transgression of desolation, the giving of both the sanctuary, and there's the sanctuary mentioned again, and the host to be trampled underfoot. And it's interesting that William Miller, he refers to the sanctuary as to the Jewish sanctuary, and we'll look at this a little bit later, referring to the time of pagan, particularly pagan Rome, and the host is God's church, which refers to papal Rome. That's how he connected pagan and papal Rome, through the sanctuary and the host. It's just, whether that's true or not, well.
Because he also saw that the sanctuary was the earth.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Yes, he saw the sanctuary was the earth, and we need to look at this because this is very interesting. In light of everything that we've learned, we need to come back now and look at Miller's understanding. It says, he said unto me, for 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. All right. So here we go. KJV, how long will be the vision? How long will the vision be? Concerning 1, the daily, 2, the transgression of desolation, the giving of both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot. He said unto me under 2,300 days. The word concerning focused the time frame only on the little horn and its activities. And here it is without the supplied Lord. How long will the vision be? The daily and the transgression of desolation, giving both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot. When you add the word concerning, the 2,300 days is focused in on the activities of the little horn with the daily and the transgression of desolation. If you take out the word concerning, the angel is actually, how long will the vision be? That's the whole vision. Do you see the difference? This is important. The question is about how long is the whole vision, including the daily and the transgression of desolation. Supplied words bring in interpretation from the translator. And this is what William Miller, he pointed this out. For how long a time shall the vision last? The daily sacrifice be taken away and the transgression of desolation continue, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot. Answer, under 2,300 days. With this translation, I have no difficulty. But what vision? I answer, the ram, the he-goat, and the little horn. So for how long a time will the vision last? He said it includes the ram, the he-goat, and the little horn. It's not just focusing on the little horn. The 2,300 days is not just about the little horn. This is a big point for Miller's framework. So we have here a summary that the ram equals Medo-Persia, which ruled from 539 BC to 331 BC, and this nation became great. And it says that in Daniel 8:4 and verse 20, where the angel Gabriel tells Daniel that the ram is the kings of Media and Persia. Okay, not just a king, but the kings. The he-goat Gabriel tells Daniel is Greece or Grecia, 331 to 168 BC, and this waxed very great. So if it waxed very great, then it became greater than Medo-Persia. And it says this in Daniel 8, verses 8 to 21, and it says the kingdom of Greece. So it's not just the first king, but the kingdom of Greece.
Well, it wouldn't have lasted that long. It was just the king of Greece, wasn't it?
Yes.
He didn't last long.
No, he didn't last very long. So the little horn is Rome from 168 BC to 1798. Should be AD.
Yes.
We'll fix that right now.
Confusing, isn't it?
Can't have that. One more. There we go. 1798 AD. And the little horn became exceeding great. So if it became exceeding great, then it had to be greater than Greece, and which was greater than Medo-Persia. This is the sequence that's very important.
It's interesting, Adrian, like this vision is giving that perspective, but when that same vision was given to Nebuchadnezzar, it was the reverse in the sense of how we value the metals, the gold, the silver, the bronze.
Interesting, isn't it? Very interesting.
And yet,
in terms of value,
and yet this way it's portraying it the other way.
It's portraying it the other way. That's an interesting point, isn't it?
It starts out a bit more pure, but it gets worse and worse.
Yes. Yes. Greater in whose eyes?
Yes. Well, that's...
So here's Miller speaking about this. First, the daily sacrifice. This may be understood by some to mean the Jewish rites and ceremonies, and by others, the pagan rites and sacrifices. When it talks about how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifices, which is supplied, but as we've said, it's not such a big deal. But here's Miller saying, well, which is it? Is it pagan sacrifices or Jewish sacrifices? As both Jews and pagans had their rites and sacrifices both morning and evening, and their altars were kept smoking with their victims of beasts, and their holy fire was preserved in their national altars and temples devoted to their several deities or gods. We might be at a loss to know which of these to apply this figurative expression to. Did not our text and context explain the meaning? It is very evident when we carefully examine our text that it is to be understood as referring to pagan and papal rites. For it stands coupled with the abomination of desolation and performs the same acts such as are ascribed to the papal abomination. Because the text says, how long should be the vision how long should be the vision, the daily, and the transgression of desolation? The word daily doesn't have a modifier, so it's daily and transgression of desolation. Daily desolation, transgression of desolation. That's how Miller is reading it, okay? To give both the sanctuary and host to be trodden underfoot. And that's how he came to paganism, because of reading it that way.
And the word sanctuary also.
Yes, we'll get to that. The daily sacrifice is the present reading of the English text, but no such thing as sacrifice is found in the original. This is acknowledged on all hands. It is a gloss or construction put on it by the translators. The true reading is the daily and the transgression of desolation. Daily and transgression being connected together by and the daily desolation and the transgression of desolation. They are two desolating powers which were to desolate the sanctuary and the host. Josiah Litch.
Very clear.
Very clear, isn't it? And we just want to be reminded when we're reading about these men, Ellen White refers to the movement from 1840 to 1844 as akin to the loud cry.
Well, it was the midnight cry.
Yeah, the midnight cry. So,
and that light is going to...
But she paralleled it to the final... She said, basically saying there never has been an expansion of light as much as this time from the day of Pentecost. This is the greatest revelation of light to the human race, 1840 to 1844, since the time of Pentecost. And will only be outshone by the loud cry, which is almost beginning, or it's here. The Dew is falling. So these are really important things that are being said here. So here we put it in a diagram. The daily has continued, paganism has continued all through. The Egyptians were doing it and beyond that. So we have the daily, but it comes down to the time of the ram. Of course, the ram goes from 538, but I've just got it from 457 BC. Great, very great, exceeding great. The daily, and the daily goes up to 508. And then there is a period of time where they set up the abomination that makes desolate, and the transgression of desolation or abomination of desolation continues till 1844. This is what the pagan and the papal desolation, and this is a continuation of this in a different form. Okay?
Very good.
Very clear?
Good to see it that way.
I thought we needed plenty of diagrams.
A lot of people get lost.
Yeah, you get lost. Well, where are all the pieces fitting? And these are the three, and the little horn continues right through to 1798. And then we have the crucifixion of Christ, and the transgression of desolation is occurring during the 1260 days, or the 1260 years. And this is what the pioneers were presenting. All right. Now we just want to stop and look at the typical Protestant view on Daniel chapter 8. That is, this is from John Gill, he's a Protestant commentator. That is, how long will the vision last? Or when shall this prophecy be at an end and have its full and final accomplishment? How long will the sacrifice be taken away or made to cease? How long will the transgression, that abomination, make the temple desolate? The image of Jupiter, Olympus, set up by Antiochus, Epiphanes, continue in it. How long shall it be given to him, or he be permitted to tread underfoot and use in the most contemptuous manner the temple of the Lord and his people? So Protestants have focused on one king that came out of Greece into the breakup of the Grecian Empire, Antiochus Epiphanes. And they are saying that the 2300 days actually refers to a period of about 3 years, which they say is approximately 1150 days. That's how they work it out. So this is what they understand that Daniel 8, 13 and 14 refer to. This is not actually part of Daniel 8, 13 and 14. They believe that these verses only apply to 166 to 164 BC, when the little horn, and now you have to ask yourself, this is one of the Grecian kings, only in a line of kings. Was he exceeding great? Was he greater than Alexander? Was he greater than Greece? Was he greater than Cyrus, the Persian? Doesn't make any sense. But this is what they believe. That Antiochus, and that they believe that the daily is the transgression of desolation. It's a stopping of the sacrifices, and that is the transgression of desolation, stopping the sacrifices of the Jews for a 3-year period, because Antiochus came into the temple in Israel. He took a great big fat pig, stuck it on the altar, and sacrificed it to Jupiter or to Apollo or whatever. And that happened for about 3 years, where the sacrifices were stopped by Antiochus. And I say this view ignores the title of the little horn as exceeding great. It also destroys the basis of the 2300 days. Because if the 2300 days finish in 164 BC, what happens to 1844?
Gone.
It's gone. What happens to Adventism?
Non-existent.
Gone. Has no meaning. So when the Spirit of Prophecy says, under 2,300 days is the central pillar and foundation of our faith, if you take that away and you go back to this view, the whole basis of Adventism, the whole meaning of the Spirit of Prophecy, it's all gone down the toilet. All of it. And there's just no point anymore for Adventism to actually exist. So we need to understand these things. It is quite important. And if you can hear the chugging of the engine and it gets a bit smelly, like, oh, what's he talking about? This is important. We need to know how the motor works, because this is what most Protestants believe on this subject.
He also paid tribute to Rome.
Yes. And there was a story where Antiochus came down to attack someone, and the Roman governor drew a circle around him and said, I want an answer from you before you step out of this circle, what you're going to do. Are you going to go home, or are you going to make problems for us? So he said, okay, I won't make problems. And he stepped out of the circle and went home. Clearly, he was not exceeding great, and that Rome was the greater one telling him what to do in this particular case. So this is, again, the typical Protestant view. Toward the close of the kingdom of the four kings that divided Alexander's kingdom, for though they were four distinct kings and had four separate kingdoms, yet these all belonged to one kingdom or monarchy, the Grecian Empire. And when that was decreasing and coming into the hands of the Romans, there rose up, stood and flourished a while King Antiochus, afterwards described, who began to reign in the 137th year of the Seleucidae, and 166 BC, and the same year that he set up the abomination of desolation in the temple at Jerusalem. As Mr. Mead has observed, Aemilius, the Roman consul, conquered Perseus, king of Macedon, whereby all Greece came into the hands of the Romans, so that this king may be truly said to arise and stand in the latter part of the Grecian Empire, when that was declining and the Roman Empire was taking place. So that's their reasoning, that this is referring to Antiochus, and that the transgression of desolation is actually stopping the offering of blood sacrifices to Jehovah, and that is a transgression of desolation. And just think about all we've been learning about blood sacrifices, and think about, is that the transgression of desolation? Stopping blood sacrifices? Just got to think about this for a bit. Miller's response to the Antiochus view, and he deals with it very simply, and it's straight out of Matthew 24. Neither could it mean Antiochus, the Syrian king, for he and his kingdom were made desolate and destroyed before Christ. And it is evident that Christ had an allusion to this very power when he told his disciples, when you therefore see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place. So if he's telling the disciples, when you see the abomination that makes desolate, it can't be referring to Antiochus, because that was 160 years before, 190 years before. So Jesus is interpreting the abomination that makes desolate as a power that they, the disciples, could see. And what was the power in charge during their lifetime? Rome. So Jesus is pointing to Rome. I believe all commentators agree that Christ means the Roman power. If so, then Daniel has the same meaning, for this is the very passage to which Christ alluded. Sound logic, isn't it? So, now we come back to this diagram that we've set up. And in all of this, we need to ask the question, what is the sanctuary? Isn't that the question? What sanctuary is being referred to in this system that's going to be cleansed? And what is the sanctuary that was cast down? There's two sanctuaries mentioned in that critical passage, and we have to fit that into this system here. That's what our task is now, okay? So first of all, we're going to talk about Miller on the covenants. And he, Messiah, shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. What covenant is this to be confirmed? I answer, it cannot be the Jewish covenant, for that was confirmed by Moses many hundred years before Daniel lived. There are but two covenants. It must of necessity be the new covenant, of which Christ is the mediator, Moses having been the mediator of the old, and Christ afterwards of the new. Is that true?
Not really, but there's the element of truth there.
based on what we know, look, I mean, no negatives on Miller, but based on what we know because of the 1888 message, is this true? It's not true in terms of the covenants. There are elements in here that are true, but by saying Moses is the mediator of the old covenant and then Christ is the mediator of the new covenant, putting one covenant after the other, this is false. But this is the understanding that Miller had when he's looking at this subject, okay? Miller's standard Protestant view of the covenants naturally affected his understanding of what is the sanctuary. Secondly, Miller had no theology of a heavenly ministry for Jesus after 1844, because what did he believe would happen in 1844?
Second coming.
End of the world, second coming. So he didn't have any theology of a heavenly sanctuary and Jesus ministering. He didn't have any of that. So that obviously affected his understanding of the sanctuary. Because he believed the second coming would take place in 1844. Therefore, his understanding of the sanctuary only related to what was happening on the earth. Okay? I'm just giving you a rationale for how he would reason this through. And here is the quote from Miller. By sanctuary, we must understand the temple at Jerusalem and those who worship therein, which was trodden underfoot by the pagan kingdoms of the world since the days of Daniel. The writer of our text, then by the Chaldeans, afterwards by the Medes and Persians, next by the Grecians, and lastly by the Romans, who destroyed the city and sanctuary, leveled the temple with the ground, and caused the plough to pass over the place. The people of the Jews, too, were led into captivity and persecuted by all these kingdoms successively, and finally by the Romans were taken away and destroyed as a nation. And as the prophet Isaiah 63:18 says, the people of thy holiness have possessed it but a little while. Our adversaries have trodden down thy sanctuary. Jeremiah also in Lamentation, the adversary hath spread out his hand upon all her pleasant things, for she hath seen that the heathen entered into her sanctuary. So he's using these texts to show that the sanctuary is on the earth. That's what he's doing. Whom thou didst command, they should not enter into thy congregation. The word host is applied to the people who worship in the outer court and fitly represent the Christian church. So he's calling the sanctuary the Jews and the host the Christian church. This is how he's dividing it. Who are said to be strangers and pilgrims on the earth, having no continuing places, but looking for a city whose builder and maker is God. Jeremiah, speaking of the gospel church, says, but I said, how shall I put thee among the children and give thee a pleasant land, a goodly heritage of the host of nations, evidently meaning the church from the Gentiles. Then shall the sanctuary be cleansed or justified, means the true sanctuary which God has built of lively stones to his own acceptance through Christ, of which the temple at Jerusalem was but a type. You see what he's doing here? The sanctuary in Jerusalem is a type of the church, which is the antitype. And this is typical Protestant covenant language. The two separate covenants. All right? So Miller considers the sanctuary of the New Testament to be God's church on earth. He considers the sanctuary of the Old Testament, or before the time of Christ, to be the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. That's what he's presenting. So, here we see we have this great big line in the middle dividing history. And the sanctuary in this period is the temple in Jerusalem, and it's an old covenant type. And after this time, the sanctuary is God's church, and it's the new covenant antitype. That's the point we're making. This is how Miller looked at the sanctuary. That was trodden underfoot and that would be cleansed. This is the one that would be cleansed by being taken, repenting of sins and being taken to heaven. It's the cleansing of the sanctuary. All right. So let's come back to we mentioned the two sanctuaries. The place of his sanctuary was cast down in verse 11, and the cleansing of the sanctuary in verse 13 and 14. So this is the same sanctuary, obviously. is this the same sanctuary up here that is cast down? This is what we need to look at now, and how that the Millerites looked at this subject. So here's Miller's original thoughts on this, because he changed his view partway through. This is what he thought first about the sanctuary in verse 11. 11th verse, this is his comment. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. By this verse, I understand that the Roman government would magnify itself even against Christ and the prince of his people, and be the instrument of destroying the Jewish ceremonial law. There's covenant language again. And finally, Jerusalem itself, the place of Christ's sanctuary. So he's saying that the sanctuary in Jerusalem was Christ's sanctuary. Was it Christ's sanctuary? Well, up until the point he said, your house is left unto you desolate. It wasn't Christ's sanctuary then. But again, he's operating, destroying the Jewish ceremonial law. And with all the talk at the moment about anti-Semitism, that's anti-Semitism. And it's not realized, but it is. It's against the Jewish way of doing things. Destroying the Jewish ceremonial law. So this is what he's understanding in verse 11. He's understanding that, and when was the sanctuary of the Jews destroyed? 70 AD. Titus came in 70 AD and destroyed. 1 million Jews were hung on crosses. There wasn't enough room to put crosses down. Wiped them out.
End of the cross.
Yeah, sorry?
It was the end of the cross after that.
They never did it again. They got sick of it after that. And they pulled down every stone from the temple, as Jesus said, and plowed the field, plowed the area, just ripped it up completely. That was the end. And this is what Miller is saying is the casting down of the sanctuary in verse 11. Okay? That's what he said first. So, this is Miller's original view. The sanctuary cast down in verse 11 is the temple in Jerusalem, and it's an old covenant type. And the sanctuary that is cleansed is God's church, the new covenant antitype. This is how he's understanding the two sanctuaries. Okay? Does that make sense? But verse 11 poses a problem for this view, because it says, and from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away, because when the Jewish sanctuary is taken away, then the sacrifices were stopped. So he says, and from the time that the daily sacrifice is taken away and the abomination that makes desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. You familiar with the 1,290 days? The 1,290 days, according to Millerite theology, is coming back from 1798. 1,290 days equals 508. And this is when it says that the abomination that makes desolate is set up and that the daily shall be taken away. 1,290 years from 1798. So if the daily is taken away in 508, it can't be taken away in 70 AD. Does that make sense? So they had a problem now, like, oh, this isn't working. The reason why Miller liked this idea, because his view of the covenants, it fitted fairly neatly with this destruction of this Jewish sanctuary just after the new covenant begins. So it fits the typology of old covenant, new covenant. But when they changed later on, and they never came back and addressed this problem with their covenant system, that when they changed to 508, their two covenant system doesn't work anymore in terms of the two sanctuaries. It was messed up. So this is where Josiah Litch in 1838, he identified the problem. I will now consider the daily sacrifices. That it could not be the Jewish sacrifices is evident from the following considerations. 1, they were taken away when the Jewish temple at Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans. But this daily sacrifice was to be taken away 1,290 prophetic days before the end of the civil reign of the little horn. See Daniel 12, 11 and 12. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,335 days. We're not going to look at that today. But go thy way till the end be, for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of days. Not op days, of days. It's a glitch in the original text. So, see, Josiah Litch is saying, that doesn't work. Because Daniel 12, 11 and 12 is telling us that the daily is taken away much later on. Because when you look at Daniel 11 and Daniel 12, it's much, much later on. Okay? So, I know it's probably a bit smoky at the moment. You can smelling all the oil, but we'll get there. We'll get there. So, sanctuary of paganism is cast down. So this is Josiah Litch again, presenting a different view of the sanctuary that is cast down in Daniel 8:11. By him, the daily, the word sacrifice not being in the original, this term is of frequent occurrence in the book of Daniel, and it will be necessary to ascertain its true meaning. What then did the anti-Christian or papal abomination remove to make way for itself? What was it that let or hindered until he was taken out of the way? I answer paganism. For although the empire was nominally Christian most of the time from the days of Constantine, yet paganism continued to maintain itself in Rome, and pagan sacrifices were offered there until the conversion of the Ostrogoths to Christianity about 508 AD. Since which time we have no account of any public pagan sacrifices being offered in the city of Rome. The place of paganism's sanctuary was then cast down, and in its place a new system of idolatry was set up, viz., i.e., the worship of the saints and images. This is really important. This is foundational to our message. So he's saying that the sanctuary of paganism was cast down in Rome in 508 AD. There's no more pagan sacrifices offered, and now the worship of the saints and images took over, and this is the transgression of desolation. Okay? Everyone's going, I've got a headache. All right. You can come back and watch over this again, but it does stretch your brain a little bit. Was paganism taken away by the Roman civil power? We present the following statement, and this is now, Miller comes to this position as well. It becomes obvious. We present the following statement of the most important and well-known transactions in the history of the church and of the world, which we believe to be intended by this prophecy. It refers to Constantine, the first great emperor. Now he's quoting AD 324. His first act of government, this Constantine, was the dispatch of an edict throughout the empire exhorting his subjects to embrace Christianity. Everyone that got baptized got 20 pieces of silver and a new pair of clothes. Wouldn't you want to get baptized? What can be meant by the sanctuary of paganism? Paganism and errors of every kind have their sanctuaries as well as truth. These are the temples or asylums consecrated to their service. I won't read all the rest of that. But it continues. The idols of the nation conquered by the Romans were sacredly deposited in some niche or apartment of this temple, and in many cases became objects of worship by the Romans themselves. Could we find a temple of paganism that was more strikingly his sanctuary? Was Rome the city or place of the pantheon cast down by the authorities of the state? And then I've just put in quotes. He says, yes, that is the case. And this is from Apollos Hale, the Second Advent Manual, where he's quoting William Miller, where Miller is saying that it's paganism, it's its sanctuary of the pantheon of gods that the Romans sacrificed to, that was cast down in 508 and was replaced by the worship of the saints and images. And many of the gods became the apostles. Like I think Jupiter became Peter, and
in the same building.
In the same building. They just changed the names. And that is the transition to the transgression of desolation, lifting up the principles of paganism, offering blood sacrifices to the saints and to God in heaven, rather than to pagan deities, to Jesus Christ. This is what was being done.
So they're actually doing physical lamb sacrifices, or it became that, the mass.
It became the mass. Yes, it became the mass. So now we update. Now the sanctuary of Daniel 8:11 moves from here over to 500 years later to 508. This is way outside this old covenant, new covenant idea. And I will say that they never really addressed this. They never addressed this issue of the two covenants going on here. And that the sanctuary to be cleansed is still God's church on earth. This became the position of the Millerites. 508 was when paganism was cast down and the transgression. So daily transgression, daily desolation, transgression of desolation. Sanctuary cast down by the pagans. God's church has cleansed the sanctuary here. This is what is taking place. So hopefully you can follow. This view does not fit the anti-type model within the Protestant view of the two covenants. The Millerite movement never addressed this, that I'm aware of. I haven't read anything yet that actually addresses this. And if they did address it, they would have had to come to a new understanding of the covenants, but we'll do all that in the next presentation. Now, what's interesting, we're coming to the end of this presentation. It says, this is Ellen White speaking, then I saw in relation to the daily, the word sacrifice was supplied. When she says, I saw, what's she saying? She was shown. The word sacrifice was supplied. Now, sacrifices are involved in paganism, but it's the whole concept of appeasement-based theology with an angry God which must be appeased by food, drink, and blood sacrifice. That's paganism, okay? It's not just the sacrifices. Was supplied by man's wisdom, it does not belong in the text, and that the Lord gave the correct view of it to those who gave the judgment cry. When union existed before 1844, nearly all were united on the correct view of the daily. What did the pioneers believe that the daily was? Paganism. Pagan sacrifices. And that the pagan sanctuary was cast down in 508 AD. That's what nearly all of the Millerites believed. But since 1844, in the confusion, other views have been embraced and darkness and confusion has followed. Now, this is actually in early writings, page 74, but I'm quoting it from Review and Herald, November 1, 1850. And I want to show you something very interesting, which we'll come back to in a later presentation. But I've stopped short here in this quote. Now I'm going to read to you the original quote. This is the original quote that Ellen White spoke. She's talking about the correct view of the daily. The pioneers had the correct view of the daily. Nearly all were united on the correct view of the daily, but since 1884, in confusion, other views have been embraced and darkness and confusion has followed. Then she says this, I have also seen that the time has not been a test since 1844. So when she uses the word also,
as well,
It was envisioned.
it's a separate issue. Okay? It's not, this is, I have seen this, I have also seen this. It's a separate issue. Okay? That's what you wrote originally. Now, in early writings, when the early writings quote comes out, which was released in 1882, this is what it says. But in the confusion, since 1844, other views have been embraced and darkness and confusion have followed. Time has not been a test since 1844. It never will be, never again be a test.
Oh, I left out 3 words. Oh, 4.
Now, this is important because when W.W. Prescott and A.G. Daniels began to present a different view of the daily than paganism, they hung on this statement, which is an adjusted statement from what Ellen White originally wrote. Now, they didn't have CD-ROMs back then. They didn't have databases just to pull these quotes up. They couldn't find all the quotes and what she had originally wrote, and it was difficult to find all these things. And so this is not what Ellen White said, because this seems to be the concluding statement of all of this. But in the original statement, she says, I was also shown that time is not a test. Okay? So I'm just pointing these things out to you. As I got here, time is expressed as the conclusion of the point Ellen White is making. This point would become the central argument of Daniels and Prescott around 1910 to neutralise the force of Ellen White's statement and prepare the way for a different view on the daily to the pioneers. The Adventist Church nearly split in half in 1910. Most people don't know this. It was a huge fight over the subject of the daily. And people, and even the people themselves, we don't know why this is even an issue. Why are they even fighting about this? But we'll get into that in a later presentation. So here is the conclusion of the Millerite position. And we'll end this presentation here. The daily, desolation, then the casting down of paganism in 508 AD, and then the setting up of the abomination that makes desolate, the transgression of desolation. And then at the end of this period, a message would come that would cleanse the sanctuary, which was God's church, leading up to 1844, when Miller believed that the saints would be taken to heaven. So hopefully you've been able to track with me with all of those points and see where the Millerites have gone, what they understood was the daily, and why, how this affects the 2300 years. Because as we'll see later on, we need a continuation right through the 2300-year prophecy. And this connection between these two as one element ensures the whole period of the 2300 years is being fitted into how long shall be the vision. It guarantees the date 1844. But the new view of the daily, which came after 1910, doesn't guarantee the date 1844. And that's why when I went to Avondale College, only one or two lecturers actually believed in the date 1844. None of the others taught it. None of them believed it. They mocked it. And why would you be a Seventh-day Adventist if you didn't believe in 1844? Almost none of them believed it. And they were being paid lots of money to teach garbage because they had a different view of the daily and because of many other things that had taken place. And I'm thinking, I'm paying a lot of university fees here to be taught this nonsense. But anyway, that's the conclusion of the matter on this subject. We will come back in the next presentation, and I'll give us a good 20 minutes break for your heads to sort of get all the smoke and oil out of your brain. And we'll come back in the next presentation. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you to those online. And we'll be back in about 20, 25 minutes. God bless for now.
I will call on the name of the one who set me free, and I will go wherever he may lead. He struck a match to the fire that was dormant in my heart, and now I see what I had never seen. To believe and to know what I could not understand, to be free from the bondage of uncertainty, I can see. With the touch of his love, the Holy Spirit came to me and washed away the doubting of my heart. And all the years spent deprived of a truth that could be mine were brought to life when he opened up my eyes to believe and to know what I could will call on the name of the one who set me free, and I will go wherever he may lead. He struck a match to the fire that was dormant in my heart, and now I see what I had never seen.